But now we're going to find all about motivation. And before he comes up here on stage, have a look at the screens and we'll see this man's movie.
As we embark on a new era for sport. It's an opportunity to discover a new kind of athlete.
Okay, hands up, that was my fault. For as long as I can remember,
champion!
It has been my ambition to become an Olympian.
Eddie, you are not an athlete!
You're right, I'm never going to go to the Olympics. I'm going to go to the Winter Olympics.
You will never be Olympic material.
Let's do it.
I really need a coach.
You do realize the time to start jumping is when you're 5 or 6.
What would you know about it anyway?
Bronson Peary, 1968 champion.
How come I've never heard of him?
They kicked him out.
He was disrespectful of the sport.
It's just after a few tips.
Give up. There's one for free.
Could you give me a push, please? A push? He's a lot higher than I expected it to be. Oh, wait! Don't bend your leg!
You're not going to give up, are you?
I'm gonna do it. I was kicked off every team I was ever on before I even got a chance to prove myself. That's why I need my own moment.
It's a world that doesn't want to know you.
So what's new?
I know what it's like to be written off. I can get you a moment. It's going to hurt like hell.
We have no desire to be associated with ludicrous antics
I think a little bit of weed came out.
and defeat.
You're a disgrace to the sport.
Really?
Personal best! And we're a disgrace!
I love proving people wrong. I have to do this.
You got more spirit than any of those other jumpers out there.
Here he comes, Britain's Eddie Edwards.
You ready, the Eagle?
Just fly.
Eddie's off.
Can he pull off the impossible?
Going, this man is the definition of focus and determination. It's Eddie the Eagle Edwards!
Thank you very much. Thank you. Hello! Gosh, thank you. It's so nice to be here. I should say, hello, dragons. Yes, the dragons of the future. It's wonderful. It's an honour for me to be here and to meet our future, the entrepreneurs of the future. It's wonderful. Have you seen the film? Yes, yes. Oh, good, good, good. Well, I see that most of you have seen it. If you haven't, the DVD does come out in about 3 weeks' time. So, so you can get it there. In fact, I've got a few copies in the back of my car, so if anybody wants one, 50 quid and it's yours. Believe it or not, I signed a deal to make this film about my life 17 years ago. Yes, before most of you were born, I signed on the dotted line and allowed them to make this film about my life. But I signed it to a very, very small company in LA, and they had to raise the finance for the film and try and find somebody to play me in the film. Now, I don't know if you know Taron, he was in The Kingsmen, which came out last year. I think he did a wonderful job. Now, when I first signed the deal 17 years ago, I wanted Brad Pitt to play me. Yes, or Tom Cruise. Yes, don't you think I look just like Tom Cruise from the back? Yeah, thank you. But it was wonderful, and I was so excited 17 years ago when they decided to make this film, and the project kept stalling, and I just got on with the rest of my life. I got married, had children, and do you remember Splash? When I did Splash, yes. Now, did I look good in a swimming costume? Yes, thank you. I won the first series of Splash, and it was actually when I won that first series of Splash that Dexter, the film director, saw me competing in Splash, And he thought, there's a story here, and he decided to buy the film rights that I signed 17 years ago. And they started making the film, and they got Hugh Jackman to play my coach, which was wonderful. Now, some of the things they put in the film was a little bit, you know, they took liberties. There was a certain amount of, let me say, artistic license, shall we say, because I was a very poor athlete many years ago when I started ski jumping, and I just joined, because I was the only ski jumper from Great Britain, I just joined whatever team was around at the time. So I trained with whatever team. It might have been a school team, it might have been a regional team, or a national team. So I trained with about 20 or 25 different coaches. On my way to the Olympic Games in Calgary 28 years ago. But they couldn't put 25 coaches in the film. So they put all those coaches into one character, which was Hugh Jackman. I must admit, none of my ski jump coaches were as good looking as Hugh Jackman. And I didn't realise how good at ski jumping Hugh Jackman was. He's pretty hot. He should be in the Olympics himself. Some of the things they didn't put on in the film, I mean, they did take a few liberties, like my father in the film. They portrayed him as a very unsupportive person, when in actual fact my dad was just as supportive as my mum, and they supported me as much as they possibly could for me to go to those Olympic Games. And it was my dream to get to those Olympic Games. It's been a dream of mine since I was about 8 years old. And I finally made my dream come true when I was 24, when I got picked to represent Great Britain at the Calgary Olympics and become Britain's first ever ski jumper. And it was fantastic, it was my dream. Now, I knew that I was going to come 58th out of 58, but that didn't matter. For me, getting there was my gold medal, because I came from a country with no snow, no training facilities, no ski jumps, no trainers, no equipment, no sponsorship, no money, nothing. And yet still, inside 20 months, I managed to get up to the top of that jump in Calgary and become Britain's first ever Olympic ski jumper. And there were some things that happened to me on my way to Calgary that they didn't manage to put in the film. Now, first of all, they used to say, you know, how did you get into ski jumping? Now, it all started for me at school, on a school ski trip, when I was 13 years old. I came from Cheltenham in Gloucestershire, and as you know, people who live down there, you've got Gloucester Ski Centre. If you're driving down the M5, you can see Gloucester Ski Centre over on your right-hand side. That's where I put a pair of skis on for the very first time when I was 13 years old, just before we went on our first school ski trip. And then I came back and I started skiing regularly at Gloucester Ski Centre, and it became my home, literally, because after school I'd be at the ski slope skiing all evening. I'd be skiing all afternoon, all weekends, all school holidays, and it literally became my home, and skiing just took over my whole life. It was all I ever thought about, talked about and dreamt about. And that was my ambition. I wanted to be the best skier that I could possibly be. And I started racing, what we call alpine ski racing, doing slalom and giant slalom. And I got really into my ski racing. So when I started skiing at 13, 2 years, just 2 years later, I got invited to join the England alpine ski team. And then 2 years after that, at 17, I got my international race license to race for Great Britain at slalom, giant slalom, super G and downhill. So that's where I started doing alpine ski racing. And then I went to America to race. And I ran out of money because I was a poor British athlete. And I couldn't afford to carry on racing. And I saw the ski jumps. And I realised that Britain have had lots of alpine skiers. We've had lots of cross-country skiers. And we've even had quite a few biathlon skiers, which are cross-country and shooting. But we've never had a ski jumper. So there was a gap in the market. And I thought, if I can crack this sport without cracking my bones in the process, I might be able to do something with ski jumping. So I took up ski jumping. Now, a lot of people say, how do you get into ski jumping? Because a lot of people think you just grab a pair of skis, you go to the top of a 90-metre ski jump, you put them on, you go down, and you hope for the best. I tried that. It doesn't really work. What you do is you start on very, very small jumps, and then you work your way up to the bigger jumps. Now you can start on as little as a 5-metre ski jump, which is designed to send a ski jumper 5 metres through the air. When you've mastered that, you move up to a 10-metre ski jump, which is designed to send the ski jumper 10 metres through the air. Then you move up to a 15-metre ski jump, 15 metres through the air, and then a 20-metre, 30-metre, 40-metre, all the way up to the 90-metre and the 120-metre, which is what you see at the Olympic Games. Now, you're supposed to spend at least 1 year, but sometimes 2 or 3 years on each jump as you're working your way up, so that by the time you reach the top of a 120-metre ski jump, you could have been jumping anywhere from 9, 10, 12, or even 14 years. And then I came along, and I went from a 5-metre ski jump to the 120-metre ski jump in 5 months. Yes, I did a crash course. That should be the name of my book, actually. A crash course in ski jumping by Eddie the Eagle. So that's how I started, on very, very small jumps and worked my way up to the big ones. And one of the most unusual things that happened to me on the ski jump, now they didn't show it in the film, but I wish they had. It was very funny, but it was very, very unusual. I was jumping in a place called Kandersteg in Switzerland, a tiny little village in the Swiss Alps. And I moved up from the 60-metre up to the 90-metre. And I was using very old ski jumping equipment because I was a poor athlete. I couldn't afford all the brand new ski jumping equipment. And I had a very old pair of skis, an old tracksuit or a ski jumping suit, and I had this old helmet. And this helmet didn't have a buckle, but I used to tie it on with a piece of string. Now, I was on the 90-metre. It was my turn to go. I got ready. I came down the jump, got to the takeoff, and I put so much force and power into the takeoff that the string on my helmet snapped. And as I was flying through the air, my helmet fell off. It was the biggest mistake of my life. I really should have held on to that helmet, because I jumped 37 metres, but my helmet jumped 98. Yeah. I must be one of the only ski jumpers in history to be beaten by his own helmet. But at the time that this happened, the Italian national jumping squad were there training, and they came over and they said, "Eddie, please, you can't keep jumping with this helmet. Why don't you have this?" And they gave me a brand new helmet and goggles. It was great. I had a pair of goggles that I could actually see out of. I had a helmet with a buckle. It would stay on my head when I jumped. And I put it on, and I jumped just that little bit better. And then a few weeks later, the West German team came along. They said, "Eddie, that tracksuit, that's no good. Have this." And they gave me a jumping suit. I put it on. I jumped even better still. And then a few weeks later, the Austrian team, the Austrian national jumping squad, they came to do some training, and they saw my skis, and they said, "Eddie, those skis belong in a museum. Why don't you have these?" And they gave me a brand new pair of jumping skis. I put them on. I jumped even better still. And then the French team, they came along. They gave me some wax for my skis. And then the Swiss national jumping squad, they came along to do some training. They showed me how to wax my skis properly and gave me some coaching. And then I thought, instead of jump for Great Britain, I should jump for the United Nations. Yes. Because without all that help from all those teams at that time, I would not have been able to make it to the Olympic Games, which were only a year away. Now, I was a poor athlete. I couldn't stay in the hotels and the B&Bs in Kandersteg. It was very, very expensive. But there was an international scout centre where Cubs, Scouts, Girl Guides from around Europe and from the UK and from sometimes around the world, they would sometimes come to this international scout centre for a holiday. And they would do their hiking badges and their mountaineering badges and their hiking and their walking badges, all that kind of thing. And they allowed me to stay in this scout centre. They charged me £1 a night, but I had to sleep anywhere. I had a sleeping bag. I slept in the car. I slept in the cowshed. I slept in the barn. Sometimes I actually slept in a bed or on the sofa, but it was warm and dry, and that was the main thing. But food wasn't part of the deal. But I got to a very good system. You see, I would sneak and hide in the bushes, and all the cubs would sit around their campfire eating their lunch or their dinner. When they're finished, they go off the campsite and they go off and do their chores. I would sneak out of the bushes. I'd go to the bin. I'd scrape the food, the leftovers, out of the bin. I would take it back to one of the 5 kitchens that were scattered around that campsite. And then I'd start separating the food, the meat, the potatoes, the vegetables. Now, separating gravy and custard was a bit difficult, but I would separate all these different foods and then I'd reheat it on the hob and I used to eat it. And I survived like that for 6 months each year for 2 years when I was training for the Olympic Games in Calgary. Now that happened 30 years ago and I thought I'd forgotten all about it until I came and ate here today. The food was lovely here, actually, it was lovely. But it was very unusual what happened to me in Kandersteg. And I met some of the other nations of ski jumping. And I met the Finns. Now the ski jumpers from Finland, they dominated the sport of ski jumping. And they invited me to train in Finland with the Finnish jumping squad. And I flew up to Finland to meet the Finnish ski jumping squad and train with them. Now, I was a poor athlete, I couldn't afford a hotel, but one of the trainers, he was a painter and decorator, and he was working in the local hospital. And he went and asked the people in the hospital if I could come and stay there for a month while I was training. And they agreed. So for 4 weeks, I stayed in a place called Kuopio, and I stayed in their hospital. But it wasn't a usual hospital. It was a mental hospital. Yes, and I've never been the same since. But my ski jumping went from strength to strength. And I think it was directly because I was staying in this mental institution. To the point where I think every year, every ski jumper should spend at least 3 weeks in a mental institution to help with their ski jumping. But it was amazing. And it was while I was in this mental hospital that I got my letter from the British Olympic Association to say, congratulations, you have been picked to represent Great Britain at the Calgary Olympics. And I ran around the hospital shouting and screaming, and this was my dream, to get to those Olympic Games, and I finally made my dream come true. Now, I started skiing at 13, and I went to the Olympics at 24, and so what's that, 11 years later. And despite having no money and having no ski jumping facilities in the UK, no snow, no sponsorship, sleeping in the car and in cow sheds and in a mental hospital and scraping food out of bins, I was very, very resilient. But I worked very, very hard, and I managed to hold on to that dream and make my dream come true, because my dream was to get to those Olympic Games. And I think there were some very important reasons why I became so popular at Calgary. I think the biggest reason was the fact that I was exemplifying that Olympic sport, the Olympic spirit. I was this tiny little David of a country against these Goliath nations of ski jumping. And people thought, yes, this is what the Olympics should be all about. And then there was a second reason, the fact that I was always laughing and joking and having fun. I was waving to the crowd at the top. I had a smile on my face. And people thought, here's an athlete with a sense of humour. He's got a smile on his face. And then there was a third reason, that it was my dream to get to those Olympic Games. And I made my dream come true. And if I inspired anybody back then, whether in academics or in sports or in business, that if you have a dream, you should hold on to that dream, hold on to that vision. And who knows, it might come true. And then there was a fourth reason, and probably the most important reason of the lot, as to why I became so popular at Calgary. I was the best looking athlete there. Yes. But well done to everybody who managed to get to the finals today. I hope you've had a great, great day, and fantastic. Well done to the finalists. Good luck to everybody. I wish you could all win something, but I'm sure in years to come, the lessons that you've learned from being here today and in the future will put you in a really good stead, and you're the business people of the future, and I salute you, and thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.
Let's hear one more time.